Hello, everyone, and welcome in. This is Stuck in the Catch Fence. Really, just kind of improv going on a fireside chat without the fire because we all know Steve needs it. It is a absolutely bone chilling 60 degrees in LA, and we thought we could warm Steve up. He's got his hoodie on. You know, he owns only two in his entire closet, one of them having Napa Auto Parts on it. And I said, Steve, let's warm up. Let's warm you up with some great NASCAR conversation. Joe, on the other hand, a heart as cold as one can ever have. There is nothing you can do to warm him up.
That's
I
true.
I have three hoodies. I have an Indiana one too.
I apologize. That was just a guess. I actually will take that's good enough for me.
And actually, I have a Masters one coming, and I have the newer edition of the Chase Elliott one on the way too. Those damn things come from China though, because they're illegally made, I'm sure.
Well, let me ask you this about the Masters one. Is the Masters one priced like the food, or is it priced like what it takes to go there?
Surprisingly, it was priced like the food. It was only
Okay.
like $45.
Not
It
bad.
tells me it's a cheap ripoff that will be good for about the Masters, and then it'll probably, the first time I wash it, come completely apart.
Wow, that's good to know.
That's all I got it for, was just to wear watching the Masters this year.
Man, this whole time, Steve, I thought you were somebody that didn't even wash your clothes.
Oh no, we
But-
just bought a brand new washer.
Really?
An LG washer. Yeah, I've got everything, man. This thing works off my phone. I can
Neat.
control it. I can do laundry.
Can't send an email, but he can control his wash from his phone.
That's right. I can set for spin cycle right now, baby.
All right.
LG, if you want to sponsor, we're always open.
Yeah, we are. We're here.
We did a live show yesterday. By far the most unentertaining race of the year. So you're probably wondering, well, why the hell they got these guys on there the very next day? Well, I figured that we could continue a conversation we vaguely began last night in terms of Chase Elliott, because we really haven't been able to hit on that. And I think that's just too much to cover in the weekly show. So I did want to talk about that because he is the most popular driver in NASCAR right now. But first, gentlemen, Steve, you said this off air, that imitation is also known as flattery to some. And I want to show you guys, I don't know if we should toot our horn, if we should get a lawyer. I'm not really sure what we should do. But gentlemen, we had a show last night, like I just said. And if you go right here to live, and I'll try to do this all as we are talking, it says no chase, no problem. Okay. Well, Auto Week, after we did that last night, and we'll try to do this unless they've changed it. I know, Joe, you can pull some strings with some prosecutors.
Yeah.
Maybe that's changed, but you showed me this morning, 12 hours after we did our show. Right here, no Chase Elliott, no problem.
For Hendrick, they changed it. They changed it.
And Joe and Steve, let me tell you this. As a master of copying somebody else's homework, but making it original to myself by adding 2 or 3 words, I think Auto Week plagiarized. What do you guys think?
I think they did.
Do you think in a court that we could hold this up and say for sure, because it is time stamped? We did ours 12 hours ago. That was uploaded this morning. Do you think that this would hold in a court of law?
In a kangaroo court of law, yes, it would. in a legitimate court of civil law, I think any good attorney would say, "Well, did you copyright that, Mr. Peters?"
Yeah, it's on a piece of it's
No,
it's,
sir.
It's somewhere.
Uh,
It's somewhere.
it's somewhere.
It looks like
Anyway.
this. It looks
Anyway,
like that.
Yeah. I'm flattered.
Okay, you're
I'm
flattered.
flattered that we could do a show and Auto Week decides to say, you know what, those guys are so good, we're just going to steal their headline.
Steve,
flattered.
is this just another example? You live out in LA where it's ruthless out there in Hollywood. Is the big guy just picking on the little guy, knowing for a fact that we have no ability based upon, I ran our finances earlier. It's not in the budget. to take these guys to court? Do you think this is just another case of the big guy picking on the little guy?
I think so.
Well, I don't know, Ryan. You know, I live in Hollywood and I've played a lawyer on TV before.
Okay.
So, and I've stayed at a Holiday Inn Select too.
So select.
Yeah, those.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that basically there is no case there, given the fact that we did not copyright it. I also think that it's naive of us to think that we're genius enough to be the only ones in the world to come up with the phrase "no chase, no problem."
I disagree with you, Steve.
Well,
Wow. As the person that came up with that, I strongly disagree that anybody could challenge my brilliance.
I think that there are a few other intelligent life forms in the world besides the two of you and me. You know, so I don't think we'd have a big leg to stand on. I think I would take the thing that looking at the advertising they had, that Genesis G90 is a damn nice car. You know, and they've got a big banner up above theirs with that ad there. We don't have squat on ours. And, I think
we never will if people keep taking our stuff.
No,
they cherry picked our
taking credit.
It's basically the big man picking on the little man, and in the immortal words of a very good friend of ours, Steve, they're a bunch of dumbasses.
Yeah,
I said it.
Yeah. That saying would come up, and yeah, you're right there. I got you there, but I don't know. I think we just take this one up as flattery that somebody was lazy on a Sunday night.
This is the hill I'm dying on, Steve.
Huh?
I've chosen this hill. I'm dying on this hill. I planted my flag.
Okay. All right.
I'm taking it all.
I'm gonna live by the theory that he who fights and runs away lives to fight another day.
Well, I don't even. Number one, credit is free. That doesn't take a lot to do. Just you don't even have to use our full names. You can go Joseph, Stefan, and dipshit. That's fine. I'll take. The three of us know who that is, and we'll take it as May. If you can't afford cash payments, we'll just take one of those Genesis that Steve just talked about. I mean, I'm sure that they got them just sitting and collecting dust somewhere.
They are nice cars.
Yeah.
So I don't know, guys. We're trying. People of Stuck in the Catch Fence. We're trying.
People can't make it in this world, Ryan. Let's talk about Chase Elliott.
Yeah,
this isn't doing us any good.
I don't think people really want to hear our babbling.
Yeah, they do, Steve. That's why we're doing
We are a voice.
No, they want to hear
us
talk about Chase Elliott,
Steve. That's what we're doing right now.
That's right.
My apologies.
You may be 6'12", but I am a little man, and I speak for little men. And damn it, if I have to sit here and just tired of defending ourselves, and it was my headline that you don't respect. So
yeah, and Steve don't even care.
No,
he doesn't even care.
Woo! I can get everything on the top shelf at Walmart.
Hey, I've won a national championship. I don't care. I'm already famous.
It's elitism. It's elitism.
Yeah,
us blue shirt can't afford the actual Adidas because it's falling off. From being washed too many times.
Adidas.
I think it's ad ass.
Yeah, ad ass.
Yeah, but
Ad-ass.
you know, yeah.
Wow,
So I speak for all of us ad assers and say, I'm with you, Joe. Let's move on. So let's get into more, I guess, serious conversation. As you may now know, and we talked about it a little bit yesterday, that Chase Elliott broke his leg in a snowboarding accident. I think it's safe to say, out of the three of us, none of us are able to snowboard. So I don't know if we can. No, you can't.
Yes, I can.
No, there's no way.
I can snowboard and surf.
No,
I surf, therefore I assume I can.
I can snowboard. I was going to say though, Ryan, as we get into this conversation, when you get finished watching our show, go over to our channel because we actually have exclusive footage of Chase Elliott and his snowboard crash. Right. It's amazing.
That's the second thing. Actually, the third thing. We had the exclusive headline that we didn't get credit for, the exclusive mugshot of Kyle Busch getting arrested in Mexico, and now we have exclusive footage of Chase Elliott wrecking his snowboard.
How anybody lived through that, I have no idea.
How we've not become more popular than what we are right now, I don't know either. But
well, Ryan, your theory may be put to the test. If any of you watched our IU basketball show we do on another network, there was some major pilfering going on at the start of that show.
You're welcome.
With the little mop lady.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'll guarantee you that is copyrighted.
No, it is not.
Oh, I find it hard to
I
believe.
can tell you right now, it is not.
That's
public
amazing.
Domain, Steve.
That's
public
amazing
domain.
If it's not, because that has been around since the 70s. I met that lady.
Yeah.
Well, for Mike's sake, it is not copyrighted.
Yeah.
Okay, well then he's safe, because I thought for sure that we're going to get a nasty letter from somebody to cease and desist this puppy right away.
At mygoodpastor@gmail.com.
All right, let's
Susie Wingwang will just shut your video down.
Let's get back to Chase Elliott. Let's stay on topic here.
So what we know, first off, that's what we'll talk about first. What we know is he broke his tibia. He had a 3-hour surgery, but we don't have a timeline. So moving forward, we now know that the most popular driver, at least in this sport, is not going to be participating for the foreseeable future. My guess is at a minimum of 6 weeks. That's just my personal guess.
Do we know, was it a clean break or just a fracture?
If it was a fracture, I don't think that they would have used hardware and had a 3-hour
Well,
surgery.
they might have,
Based upon, to give background, I do therapy. So to give background on that, more often than not, if you have to use hardware, is to line it back up and it's not going to heal by itself. Again, I have no idea. I've not seen his x-ray. I've only seen, like Joe said, his crash. But we don't know exactly the details, and they don't have to tell us due to HIPAA. So that part, we can only speculate. But my guess is at minimum of 6 weeks. I think Kyle Busch missed 12 whenever but he broke both leg.
He had compound fractures.
Yes, his was very
serious. Those were clean breaks, and bones sticking out of the skin.
So, and it was on both feet. It wasn't just one foot.
You know what's amazing is he climbed out of that car.
Yes, that
was amazing,
and that must have been one hellacious boost.
Painful climb.
Yeah. So let's just say for the next 2 months, hypothetically, we don't have Chase Elliott. Joe, I'll start with you. Being somebody that typically roots for Hendrick and his drivers, how do you now approach the races knowing that Chase Elliott will not be in the race?
Well, I don't really approach the races any different. I mean, Chase Elliott obviously sustained a horrific injury, snowboarding, and we're going to get into talking whether he should have been doing that during the season. So we'll save that for a minute. I think Hendrick does exactly what they did this weekend. They take their Cup drivers. They put them in as good equipment as they can. They let Josh Berry fill in and tell him not to wreck the car. And that means, if you can finish the race 4 laps down without wrecking that car, that's what you need to do. And I think that's exactly what we saw on Sunday last night. And I think that's what we'll continue to see. As a fan, I'm going to let Steve talk about that, because why I am a Hendrick fan. I'm a Kyle Larson fan, and I'm a Kyle Larson fan because I'm a huge dirt track fan. That's no secret. Chase Elliott not being there, I like to see the sports superstars in the race. But if it comes down to Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott, I'm obviously rooting for Kyle Larson. That's why I didn't have a problem what he did last year at Auto Club. So, my perspective remains the same on the race. I'm going to watch the race whether he's in or not. I'm going to watch the race whether Kyle Larson's in it or not.
Well, Steve, like Joe just mentioned, you are the resident Chase Elliott fan. What's it going to be? What is your focus now, and what is your mindset now, knowing that this driver is not going to be in it? Does it change at all? Does it make it less entertaining for you? Speak on that aspect.
Well, yes. And I kind of touched on one thing that I'll hit on real quickly again, because I did touch on it yesterday. But definitely, I mean, when you have a driver that I'm as passionate about as Chase Elliott, and until probably the 4th of July, he's not going to be running again. Yeah, that takes away my fun of rooting for a single driver. and living and dying with Chase Elliott. Daytona was and then Fontana was, maybe 5 more laps and he runs down Kyle Busch. I don't know, but I'm going to believe he could have, but whether he wouldn't have probably, because Kyle was pretty dominant there. But I'll tell you, and I touched on this. So yeah, as a fan of Chase Elliott, it changes my thought process of how I watch a race now. But I addressed this yesterday. What it did for me going into Vegas was it made it kind of more liberating for me, because I didn't have to devote all my attention to the 9 car, because the 9 car I knew was irrelevant at that point in time. So I got to pick a driver that I wouldn't normally pick. And necessarily I picked Larson a bunch of times, but maybe a different driver that I wouldn't have picked of my set of 5 drivers to pick in the pool. And it broadened my horizon to say, I have no dog in this hunt. I don't really care who wins the race. I want to see a great race. And I was pretty disappointed in that too.
Yeah.
That went away. So the one time when I can just root for a great race instead of rooting for Elliott to find a way to win, that doesn't happen either. So yeah, it bums me out that I'm not going to see Chase, but I am happy that he still has, if he gets a waiver, and we'll talk about that, if he deserves one or not. He doesn't have to make this 30 points thing. All he's got to do is go out in the second half of the season and win a race. Chase is generally pretty dominant, a car in the second half of the season. I think he'll come away with a win before the season's over and get in the playoffs. I'm not too worried about that at this point. It's just that I look forward to July when I think he'll come back and run.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I think I'm going to have fun exploring, rooting for other drivers.
Right.
And I become a pseudo 8-car fan now. I mean, I want to see Kyle Busch do well.
Right.
I think he's reached that Dale Earnhardt. I'm sorry, he's reached that Dale Earnhardt territory where he's crossed the threshold of being the asshole of the sport, to where now he's the grizzled, loved veteran.
Well,
Okay,
Steve,
ahead,
I learned recently, scouring Facebook and some of the Rowdy Nation groups, that if you now root for Kyle Busch just because he's in a Chevrolet, you're not a true NASCAR fan and you're not a true Rowdy fan. So you're not allowed.
That's some people's opinion. That is actually correct. And
well,
we have a great time trolling those people as well.
Yeah, we do.
And I'd be the first one to say I'm that person, Joe, because I'm a Chase Elliott fan. The minute Chase Elliott comes back, I hope he puts the 8-car right into the freaking wall every chance he can for the rest of the season. But until then, I'm going to root for the 8-car because it's so close to the 9.
Well, speaking of Kyle Busch, I've been in this situation to where my driver, like we talked about, did wreck. And unfortunately, it was in a NASCAR race, an Xfinity race, and it was at Daytona. And obviously, we talked about the injury that he sustained. And I can only tell you personally, my attempt was to be fully invested in whoever was in the 18 car. I think they split it between Matt Crafton, Trevor Bayne, and somebody else. And I'll just tell you this. It wasn't Kyle Busch. That's just all there was to it. It wasn't Kyle Busch. And I tried my best to be completely all in, and it just simply was not possible.
Well, all right, Ryan, if I'm going to do that, invest in whoever's in the 9 car and where he finished in Vegas, screw that. I'm rooting for Cody Ware or JJ Yeley just to piss you off.
Well, JJ Yeley's a great driver.
If the 9 car is going to finish in 27th, 28th, 30th place without wrecking the damn car, then he's right in Cody Ware parking lot right now. So I'll just root for Cody Ware because I know that would piss you off.
Not unless you picked him in our 5. Then I'd be very elated. So, but no, it was hard because it's, at least in my perspective, Kyle Busch, at least in my lifetime until most recently, was my only avenue of winning a championship. And that was before he even won one, but the possibility exists. The Reds look nowhere close. Notre Dame has been close, but not really. In terms of football, the Bengals at that time were getting ready to pick the number 1 overall pick. And then the Pacers have always been the Pacers, which is just good enough, but not quite there. And Kyle Busch to me was like, I'm like, this is my only chance to realistically have a championship in my lifetime. And oddly enough, he ended up winning the championship that year. But it's still as excited as you are. And Steve, this is kind of funny because it's near the same timeline. This happened right before race 3. Kyle was in race 1. So you don't even, you get to fall back on Hoosier basketball. Okay. Thankfully, the Hoosiers are now that. And you mentioned that yesterday. Like, yeah, I turned the race off because I do an Indiana show on the Grueling Truth, and my commitment went there because my driver's no longer locked in.
Right.
I think that's what's going to happen to most Chase Elliott fans. And if I'm NASCAR, I think that's where I worry in terms of attendance, in terms of merchandise, in terms of viewership. I think most people, Steve, when they don't have someone they root for, they turn it off, especially if it's like Las Vegas this past week. If you tuned in and you just watched 75 laps of William Byron lead by 3 seconds, 4 seconds, you're like, nah, I'm going to go
Turn on the IU
close.
game.
Whatever it may be. I don't care, whatever it may be.
USFL football, whatever.
Selection Sunday is this weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
There's going to be more people that are going to be invested in a Selection Sunday that are Chase Elliott fans that would have otherwise now.
Right.
And that's the part, if I'm NASCAR, I'm really concerned. Joe, do you feel differently about that?
No, I think you're spot on. I think to the normal fan, and I think we have to caveat this. I don't feel that I'm over the top with my fandom of NASCAR, but like I said, if Kyle Larson's not racing, I'm watching the race. I'm rooting for Kyle Busch. If Kyle Busch isn't racing, I'm watching the race and picking a driver that I feel has the best chance to win the race. But I also gamble on NASCAR, and I enjoy gambling on NASCAR and betting on NASCAR because of the odds that you have and the potential to win a big amount of money on very small investment or risk. So that gets me a little bit more into the race, and I think people that don't bet on NASCAR. So I play a game with it and I have fun with it, so I'm invested in it literally. I think if you are at that point where you don't do that and you are a fan of Chase Elliott or whatever driver, and that driver's not going to compete anymore, I think you're absolutely right. You find a different avenue. And I mean, a quick life story that I have that, my wife and I met at Kentucky Speedway. I mean, we literally met at Kentucky Speedway. She had she loved NASCAR. She had a fandom of Dale Earnhardt Jr., very passionate fan. We went to quite a few races. We went to Bristol. We went to Kentucky Speedway. We'd watch the race together every Sunday. When Dale Jr. retired, she's pretty much half out of it. I mean, if I'm watching it, she'll sit there and watch it, and she'll keep up with it. But at the end of the day, she doesn't care one way or the other anymore. I mean, NASCAR legitimately lost a fan when Dale Earnhardt or Dale Jr. retired. So, and I know that there were several 100,000 people that when Dale Earnhardt died, they quit watching NASCAR. So, when you do lose your favorite driver, it breaks your heart a little bit. I mean, I was a fan of Dale Jr. mostly because that's where my fandom went after Dale Earnhardt died. And when he retired, it was a little gut punch for me. But I came out of it. So, I do think that NASCAR is going to be hurting a little bit. They're going to feel the impact of Chase Elliott not showing up to the racetrack on Sundays. Right.
Can I?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
A bunch of things here on Joe's. First off, it says a lot that your wife goes from one loser to the next. From gives up on Dale Earnhardt Jr. and marries you. Holy cow! Like, let's just keep picking losers. All right, so let me get that out of the way. All right, now to the serious part. I think that one of the things that I thought about, first off, I gave some thought to it based on conversation last night, and I looked at it like, okay, if Chase Elliott was not in the sport, who would I be rooting for right now?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, because I don't know that it'd be Kyle Busch. I like Kyle Busch now because I like what Kyle's doing, but I'm thinking back now because I went from Earnhardt in my age, I went from being a Dale Senior fan to being a Jeff Gordon fan to absolutely hating Jimmy Johnson, and I was a Bill Elliott fan before I was a Dale Earnhardt fan.
That was going to be my question. Is if
Yeah,
you
I
were
was.
Bill Elliott
That's
fan.
why I'm a
Okay.
Chase Elliott fan.
Okay.
Is because I truly am a Bill Elliott fan.
Right.
You know, $1 Million Bill, awesome Bill from Dawsonville.
Awesome Bill.
Yeah, and I got into the sport becoming a 9-car fan in the Coors because I wanted Coors. I wanted my Coors from Arkansas. You know, but we couldn't cross the Mississippi to get our Coors. Couldn't bring
Steve
them back.
lived during the Prohibition, if you guys are wondering.
Yeah, and I'm that old. And then I thought about, okay, so Chase never decided to be a race car driver, and he wasn't in the sport. Who the hell would I be cheering for right now? And I don't know that I have an answer for that. I really don't know. I don't know. But
I think most people think it'd be Hendrick. But in the same case with me, it wasn't Joe Gibbs. I could care less, honestly. It wasn't that.
Here's the funny thing. I'm definitely a bow tie fan, but I drive a Ram pickup truck because the damn Ram pickup truck was 20,000 less. It had all the bells and whistles on it that the damn Silverado did. So the hell with Chevy charging me $20,000 extra dollars just for that bow tie. Screw you. I'll take the Ram on my rear bumper instead of the bow tie. Anyway, so that question did come up after we did the show yesterday. I'm like, who would I be cheering for if Chase was not a driver? And I don't know.
Yeah,
no, I have not. I've not, because I just kind of decided I was going to root for Kyle Busch and kind of put it out of my mind. But here's the big thing, and we alluded to this, Joe. You made a good observation, and Ryan, you both did. What do we have coming up starting this weekend that's going to occupy the next 6 weeks of sports?
Madness.
What a bad time for Chase to go out, because he does carry the largest single following of any driver in the sport right now. And all of a sudden he's gone away for 6 to 8 to 12 weeks. We don't know. And that's right in the heart of one of the biggest sporting events in the country.
So let me give you a hypothetical. Let me give you a hypothetical, Steve.
Yeah.
So
okay.
let's just say Fontana was this next weekend.
Right.
And you're like, hey, I'm on the fence. I want to go. I want to see Chase. It's
I
only
definitely
45 minutes drive.
No.
Hypothetical that you were going to go. Let's just,
okay.
You're the
All
average NASCAR fan.
Right.
Now, IU plays exactly the same time the first round of the tournament against Buckney State A&M. Are you staying home to watch that versus go see Chase, or not see Chase now?
No doubt.
Okay.
I'm staying home to watch the game, and I'll pick the race up on. I'll watch the race on commercials. Other than the fact that I need to watch the entire race because we do the show, and I want to be credible in the show. So therefore, I would probably DVR the race and not give a damn about going to Twitter and finding out who won, and just watch it so I would be able to talk about all the nuances. So yeah, I wouldn't. I'd watch college basketball all day.
Okay.
Despite whether Indiana was playing or not, and I would not make an attempt to drive the 45 minutes to a triple, Auto Club Speedway, and go fight the traffic, fight the crowd, pay for warm beers. Can't get a Martinsville hot dog. No, I'll just stay home and flip onto the race and catch some highlights of it, and then DVR it, and sometime before the show tonight, watch the entire race so I don't miss anything. But I'd be watching college basketball. So,
Joe, let's do the same hypothetical with you. In 2 weeks, you're going to go to Atlanta Motor Speedway. Say before you had all plans to go to Atlanta Motor Speedway, Kyle Larson, you find out, is said a bad word on Twitch. and is not allowed to race at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And the UC
Wow.
Bearcats have made it to the second round of the NCAA playoffs. Would you try to get out of going to Atlanta, or would you still go?
I would go. I would go to Atlanta. Going to a race, it's, for me, is an event. I take my camper down. I'm going to take my camper down. We're going to spend the weekend there. It's the whole atmosphere that I'm going to, and the race.
You have a camper? You actually
I have
own
a camper. I go to NASCAR races, Steve. You're not a true damn NASCAR fan that goes to NASCAR races if you don't have a camper. Don't give me shit about having a camper.
Steve can't afford parking for his camper in LA.
I know.
Yeah. You can keep it
that's
in
as much as our mortgage down there.
You know what people do? You know what people do with their campers in LA? They rent them out to homeless people.
Yeah, they cook meth in them. Meth and crack.
They cook meth in them or rent them out to the homeless.
That's right. That's how Breaking Bad started.
But
that's exactly.
But no, I will
15 miles from my house.
I will catch that game on my TV in my camper.
Okay.
You
got satellite in your camper?
No,
Steve. You got a phone.
I have this thing called the internet. Al Gore gave it to us back in the day. And
Ryan, I'm gonna tell you what.
Now they have
detectives in VV, Indiana.
I gave you
way too much.
Gave you the internet. You remember that speech? I think you
voted
for Al Gore. You remember that?
Then he sold it to the
so anyway, yeah, I have this thing called YouTube TV as well. Great subscription thing that you could do. You get all the local channels and all the basic cable channels on the internet that Al Gore gave us, Steve. So yeah, I do have a TV and the internet, and I'd be able to catch that game on my TV and my camper at the racetrack, which is incredible.
I'll tell you what, here's what I have. I have Spectrum cable, which sucks.
Nobody gives a shit, Steve. Go ahead, Ryan.
And then I have a smart TV, of which I'm not smart enough to know how to turn it on.
Smart TV. So Al Gore famously said, "It's not the win." Name that TV line. So now I'll get to what I think might be the most entertaining discussion, but a real discussion that NASCAR might realistically have to have. And you've mentioned it a couple times, Steve. Does Chase Elliott deserve a waiver? Because more often than not, we've seen waivers granted based upon injuries happening in motorsports. And I think that's where it at least needs to be discussed. I have my own opinion on it. And I think that's where NASCAR is going to go based upon how I feel. But I think there's other people out there, mainly non-Chase Elliott fans, that think because a driver decided to go snowboarding in the middle of the season does not deserve a waiver. It's much different now. You know, Kyle Busch missed a long amount. He came back for the All-Star race. That was his first race back. He had to work his way into the top 30. That's no longer, you don't have to do that now. You know, based singly on this year's rule. You just have to win a race. So it should be easier for Chase Elliott to come back now if he is granted waiver. But that's not the question. The question is, does he deserve a waiver for a snowboarding accident? And Joe, I'll go to you first.
I think that in any sport, we talked about, like with tires coming off last year, what's the standard? What is the precedent that's been set? And I know this has been a few years back, but NASCAR's already set the precedent that, you know, for off the track incidents that they're going to grant a waiver. And I forget what year it was, 2014 or 2015. Maybe it wasn't even back that far. Tony Stewart flipped a dune buggy or a four-wheeler, hurt his back. And I think he was out for like 8 weeks, I think, or 9 weeks. It was a while. In NASCAR, I mean, it wasn't even a decision. It was, yeah, we're giving him a waiver. I think you have to do the same thing for Chase Elliott. My personal opinion, I feel like if there's an on the track incident, like Kyle Busch a few years ago, where he broke both his legs in a crash
last year.
Yeah, Kurt Busch last year, on the track incident, and you can't do anything about it. You're not cleared. You got hurt doing the sport. Then I think, yeah, it's a no brainer. You get a waiver. Personal opinion with the Chase Elliott thing, and I want to see him in the playoffs. I think it's good for the sport. I feel like, hey, you're out doing something that is not NASCAR related and you got hurt. It's not the fault of you doing your job the reason why you can't compete. You know, and when you talk about, say, an illness where a driver can't compete for a race, I think that is something totally altogether as well. But in this instance, if he's going to miss 8-12 weeks, I have a hard time. And I did with Tony Stewart saying, okay, yeah, we're going to give you a waiver. You jump back in there like nothing happened. And that might be hard for people to hear, but that's my feeling. But at the end of the day, I think NASCAR doesn't even think twice. I mean, they're going to give the waiver to Chase Elliott, and he's going to win a race and be in the playoffs. So it's going to be like it never happened 20 weeks from now.
Steve?
Yeah, it's interesting because I really hadn't given this a whole lot of thought, but Joe makes up some good points. When Tony Stewart injured himself, that was pre-Chase, wasn't it, or was that in the midst of the Chase already in existence?
I think it was the first or second year of it.
Okay, so the Chase,
yes.
whether the Chase it was in existence or not is all that matters. If it wasn't, it's almost like now. I don't see what the big fuss is. First off, I think Chase Elliott could force NASCAR to draw a line in the sand on this, because they're either going to have to say, like Joe said, they may have already set the precedent with Tony Stewart, but Chase is going to make them revisit that line in the sand and say either we don't grant waivers for non in sport accidents or injuries, so therefore he's not going to get a waiver, or we're going to grant a waiver for anybody that's injured. I mean, think back to Jeremy Mayfield, who went to drug rehab, and what if he, has to miss 8 races, 10 races because of drug rehab, which nobody wants him in the car when he's on coke anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah, he may have been a better driver for all we know.
There he goes.
He'd have been like Bubba Wallace.
I'm going fast. No, you're going backwards, Jeremy. Get the hell in the pits.
Anyway,
the race has been over for 6 hours. I mean, he's still going.
What if somebody has some heart issues or something? I don't know. I think it could force NASCAR to draw a line in the sand. However, given the set of circumstances that's there now, the reason I haven't given a lot of thought, because I don't think it's a big deal. I think he's not going to be out. If he's out all season, there's no sense of granting him a waiver.
Right.
If he comes back at any race up until the Chase, and I don't think they anticipate him being out longer than the 36. What is it? How many races is it? 26 races? I don't think he's going to
for the regular season. Yeah.
Yeah, regular season. I think he's going to be back before then, and he's going to have to win a race. I mean, they're not going to give him a waiver to say, "Oh, we're sorry, you're like snowboarding. You're automatically in the Chase."
Right.
He's still. I don't care if he has 2 shots at it. He's going to have to win one of those 2 races to get in the Chase. So I don't think the waiver really is that important at all, truthfully.
Well,
he either gets his ass back in his car within 26 races and wins one, or he's not going to probably qualify on points.
I will say this, Steve, if a waiver is granted this year, and it should have been done when Tony Stewart got hurt,
right,
the NASCAR needs to rewrite the rules and say, if you are a full-time driver and you are able to compete in every race, you must do so.
Right.
And by saying that gives a little leeway to say, if you get hurt off the track, you can come on back. If there's a reason why you can't compete, and it's a legitimate reason approved by NASCAR, like a broken leg, you're in the hospital for whatever reason, you're in a car accident outside through no fault of your own, then obviously, because you would almost have to do something like that, because on the same hand, we're all looking at this. Chase Elliott was doing a recreational activity and got hurt, and it's easy for all of us to say, well, you know what, he's in the middle of his season, he should be focused on NASCAR, he shouldn't be out doing that, he has off time to go snowboarding or skiing or whatever, and it's his fault he's hurt. I think it's very easy for people to say that, but on the same hand, my feelings would be totally reversed if Chase Elliott was during the week driving down the road to go to his dad's house and happened to get T-boned and break his leg and couldn't compete. So I think my view of that would be totally different. I'd be sitting here saying you have to give him a waiver. It's not like he wanted to get hit by a car. So I think if you do grant the waiver, then you almost have to change the rules to the wording of you shall compete if you're able. If an off the track incident happens, whatever that may be, and you can't compete, and it's approved by NASCAR, then obviously you're good to go whenever you can get back in the car.
Well, Joe,
Ryan?
that is the rule, because it is now you can't just win a race and then not compete. That is the way the rule's written. You have to win a race and be able to participate in every single race that you're able to afterwards. Exactly for that reason. If Cody Ware wins the Daytona 500 and then Rick Ware goes, well, shit, we're just not going to run Cody Ware the rest of the year. They didn't want that to happen. It's you also then have to participate. So for one of two instances. And that's actually where I was going to go with it, Joe. When you decide to draw that line in the sand that it can't be a racing incident, now it becomes subjective. And when things become subjective, they get more scrutinized. So what if Chase Elliott was playing golf and got hit in the back of the head with a golf ball? That's not something he could foresee, but he just wanted to go out and play golf. There's all kinds of different things that could happen to where people end up getting hurt. Some people enjoy their leisure just like, some people enjoy it a different way, whether it's playing poker, snowboarding, whatever, playing basketball. If he tore his ACL on the basketball court because he decided to play a pickup game with whoever it may be, and he couldn't drive a car, I don't know where you can draw that line to where it ends up being fair.
I agree.
More than anything, go ahead, Joe, or go ahead, Steve.
I think it's pretty simple, truthfully. I the more I think about it, I just don't think the waiver is really relevant.
Unless it's an illegal activity.
Yeah,
like
it's
you
not
mentioned
relevant. You're right.
And actually, I have a funny thought on something else too, but I'll get to that here. But the waiver really, truly, as Joe said, is like what the Cody Ware example is the perfect way. Other than that, it's like there are two ways to qualify for the chase: go in on points or win a race.
Yeah, points are out.
Well, points are out for Chase.
No, points are out altogether this year. I guarantee it.
Well, and that's actually a conversation I want to bring up. Joe,
all right. Okay. Well, let me finish this.
Go ahead.
So the only two ways to qualify are just go in on points, which Joe thinks is out, and I don't know that I disagree, or win a race. I think the waiver only says that we say you have to compete in all races if you're physically able to compete. That's what the waiver's for. It's not for Chase to get automatically put in. No. It's just like you're not going to have to compete in all 26 pre-races to qualify for the chase. Yes, if you are less than 26 and you win a race, you still will be eligible for the chase. I'm fine with that. Do that. That's fine. If it's a physical injury of any nature.
Right.
Okay.
And that's going to bring me to my point.
Okay.
That I was attempting to make, I guess.
You made it well. You did.
Well, but one thing that I wanted to end with is I don't think Chase makes the playoffs this year either way if he does win a race. If he misses more than 8 weeks, he can come back and win a race. He's not going to have the points to qualify for the postseason at the end of the day, because I think that we're going to have well over 16 winners this year. I think that we might NASCAR might set the record for different winners this year, and I could fall flat on my face with that. But even if we have 17 or 18, what we have last year, 19,
19, including postseason, because the first three winners of the postseason
were non-chase oriented drivers.
Right. Okay. So, but we had 16 for the playoffs exactly.
Yeah.
All right. We get the 17 drivers that have won a race, and you're doing that 16 spot based off points. And if he misses 8 weeks, he's not going to have those points.
But
we seen NASCAR last year, and this is kind of where I have fault with NASCAR, one of many at times, is they really just made up a rule so that Martin Truex and Ryan Blaney didn't have to fight for a playoff spot.
Right.
And I feel like NASCAR would do the same thing to get Chase Elliott in. I don't know how they would do it, but I guarantee you there would be a meeting. And Joe, I'm glad you brought this up, because I feel the same way, that there is an actual possibility that this may happen when this was never thought of in years before, is that if Chase Elliott does win, I could literally see them saying, well, Chase wasn't able to compete, so let's go best average finish.
They can't do that.
Like, I'm just saying.
I know that they can't do that though. Yeah,
I
know
think
you're right. You're right.
we have
But
seen.
I would cry foul then, and I'm a Chase Elliott fan, and I would cry foul.
Well, but and Ryan's absolutely right.
Right.
How many times over the last 10, 12 years have we seen NASCAR go, we're going to tweak that a little bit to benefit us? And I don't think that this would be any different.
You mean like the Scotch tape rule?
Yes. Yeah,
wow, we made that a rule. When?
Yeah, we made that a rule 15 minutes ago after we realized you had Scotch tape on your car.
On the car, yeah. Jesus.
Just keep bringing that shit up.
I'll just say this. I believe if Chase Elliott wins one race, he'll win two. And that meets the whole thing.
Yeah, one, you win 13.
If you win two races, you're at the top of the heap anyway. So
what I would pay attention to, Steve, is this new short track package / road course package. If it's anything that gets closer back to what we saw in 2020,
I think that favors Chase.
Exactly right. Then
what is the first road course, Ryan?
Do what?
How many weeks are we away from the first road course?
Oh God, I'd have to look that up. I'm not completely positive. I could look that up while you guys are talking.
Yeah, no, I think right now.
Well, he'll miss at least one road course.
Will he? Because I think we're 3 weeks in. I think 6 weeks. Is that right?
I will vet you here in just a second. If you
okay.
give me 1 second.
Yeah.
No. Circuit of the Americas is in 3 weeks. So
okay.
So he will absolutely.
I was 6. Okay. All right. See, my brain works in mysterious ways. It's the 6th race of the season. Is that right? There's 7,
4th, 5th. Yes, 6th race of the season. Yeah.
I think that he's obviously not going to be back by that time, and
no, zero.
He needs to do everything he can to be at every road course he could be at, if he is going to make the playoffs and get 2 wins.
Yeah, but I do agree, because of the new package, the road courses will favor Chase Elliott, because it's going to put the car back in the driving back in the hands of the driver, and I think Chase is one of the better. I think he was losing road course races because the damn aero package in these cars was so balanced and so even for everybody. A lot of guys who were less qualified than a Chase Elliott or a Martin Truex, or a Joey Logano or a Tony Stewart.
I think another thing too,
we're not winning,
is that now Alec Gustafson didn't have to worry about playoff points. He could actually go for the win, because now we don't have stage breaks.
Yeah, that's right. That's another great point.
And Gustafson always went for stage points. It didn't matter if he was Chase Elliott was always a top 5 driver, and he always went for stage points versus the win. And you can't, and more often than not, you couldn't be on both strategies.
Yeah, so road course. Not only do you not have to worry about playoff points anymore,
well, you get them, you just don't get a caution.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to worry about the stage racing at the road course. You just made that point, didn't you? Okay.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. It's a great point.
Disregard.
So I think that basically Chase just needs to go get healthy, get his leg healed, get back in his car, and win a race or two. And all this discussion is a moot point.
I think personally, Steve, it's going to be, when is he fit to take a wreck? I think that's more
right.
If you're going at Talladega, you get hooked and go into the wall, is your body able to withstand that? And I think that's what it simply comes down to.
And the road courses, a lot more braking, a lot more 2-foot pedaling there. You're putting a lot of pressure on that left tibia, as opposed to just skirting around Daytona or Talladega, where you ain't braking anyway in any of those races. Your left foot's just resting idle. But you get into a road course or a short track, you're braking a lot and you're moving both feet around quite a bit. So yeah, you're right. That his physical ability to drive after his leg is healed is going to be in question.
Right. And oddly enough, that's where Kyle Busch actually got his first win, was a road course at Sonoma. And he talked about the fact that his body went completely numb the last 10 laps because he was hurting so bad that he thought he went in shock.
Kyle Busch is a beast.
And I think that's, again, where things initially started to change for Kyle Busch, is because he pushed himself so hard. But I think Chase Elliott's going to be one of those type of drivers, Steve, and we'll finish it out with this. Do you think this changes the mindset and focus of Chase Elliott? Because now, first he had the incident, then he tried to make light of the incident. Do you think he tries to 180 and say, No, I'm not just the sport's most popular driver. I'm also really good because different drivers have different motivations.
Yeah.
And doing this, I think some people would just, I know the sponsors probably think it's a disservice to them, but I think Chase may think that this is a disservice to his fans because they come to watch him race. They come to view him on television. And now those people that have already paid to see him there, it's not like the NBA where those guys don't give a shit if they play at all.
Right.
NASCAR drivers care that you're there. They're there to
Right.
sell the product. They're there to sign autographs and be a part of the most, in my mind, how do I put this? The most compassionate fans on in all sports. And I think that they're really going to be hurting.
The funny thing was, I actually half thought Chase would be at the track on Sunday, sitting in a wheelchair, sitting there. He was released on Saturday after the surgery. They let him go home the next day. He flew home. I thought it wouldn't shock me if you see him wheeling out of the pits in a wheelchair, his leg in a cast, and then fly home from Vegas. But it didn't happen. Smart move, it didn't. But I think I'm going to give Joe credit for this. I think to your point, and to Joe said this earlier, I think you see a different mentality of Chase Elliott now. You see a meaner Chase Elliott because he's only concerned about winning now. Points don't mean crap to him anymore. Gustafson's got to get that in his head too. They just got to go out and win races now. Screw the points.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be 10 races short. And the only thing they need to do, you're going to see him wreck more. You're going to see him be a little more aggressive, I think. And you're going to see him be a little less generous on giving up a lane or something like that, and a little more paybacky if you tag him than he's been in the past. He's been a pretty mild, quiet guy, but I think right now he's got one focus, and I'm kind of excited to see this. See a pissed off Chase Elliott, see how good he is, because he's only got to go win races now. He's forget the points,
Well, Joe, before you start, I actually have one last topic before we end, but I want you to answer. Do you also think that we'll see a different Chase Elliott than what we've seen before?
Absolutely. I actually think that we have started to see that even before the incident. Chase Elliott's always been kind of tight-lipped, didn't say anything too egregious to anybody. You look back at Auto Club in the the interview he gave after that about Kyle Busch winning. Last year, 2 years ago, Chase Elliott would never say anything like that. Get a little bit controversial. And I think he's kind of morphing into having his own attitude. And I think that we were starting to see that. But I think Steve's absolutely right. He comes back from this injury in 8 to 12 weeks or whenever that may be. I think it's no holds bar. He's winning races and he's going to do it at all costs because I think he's a competitor. He wants to win. And I think that we see a very Kyle Busch-like, I'll say, Chase Elliott.
So my last question to you guys, and I want to make sure I got this in because I didn't want to forget this. We've now seen this sport morph a little bit. Brad Keselowski's running every single SRX race this year. Christopher Bell, huge on the dirt scene. Kyle Larson obviously could race every single night if he wanted to. Kyle Busch has been running dirt. We've seen that it's been more lax when it comes to these owners allowing their superstars to pursue other things outside of the NASCAR track Monday through Wednesday. Hendrick notoriously did not want other drivers to do anything outside of just be here at the track, race, do not shit, and then come back and do it again the next week. With Kyle Larson, he pretty much had to say, if the only way I get Kyle Larson is if I let him race on dirt.
Right.
Now he's going to race at the Indy 500. Joe Gibbs, on the other hand, he prevented Kyle Busch from racing in the Indy 500. And if it wasn't for Coy Gibbs, none of his drivers would have raced on dirt. That being said, do you think we now see the leash was given by these owners when it comes to off-track availability, racing, snowboarding? Do you think we now see contracts being changed that go, if you're not, we essentially want you here no matter what. During the regular season, you do not shit so that you don't ruin the chance for us to sign, because at the end of the day, this is a sponsor-driven sport. Do you think the owners try to take back control of that now?
Well, I think that I think that you're going to have a hard time doing that because you talk about a Kyle Busch, or excuse me, Kyle Larson. I mean, that's how that man breathes. If you tell him he can't go run dirt track races, I think he looks for another team to sign with to say, hey, I'm going to run these things. He has a big following on dirt. I would say the majority of Kyle Larson's fans are transfers from, World of Outlaws and sprint car racing. That's why I'm a fan of Kyle Larson. So if you take that away, I think that that's actually a detriment to NASCAR because a lot of those dirt track fans aren't going to turn on the race on Sunday because, where's the draw there? He's no longer part of their world. And make no mistake, there is a whole other following to dirt track racing that they could care less about NASCAR on Sunday. They could care less. It doesn't even enter their mind. But you know what? If they're a Kyle Larson fan on the dirt and that's their favorite driver, they're watching on Sunday because that's their favorite driver.
Joe, to your point, real quick, if you're able to get a pit pass, you meet Kyle Larson, he's completely humble and nice to you. That is a person gained for a lifetime.
Right.
That you can't get at a NASCAR event, that type of local short track availability that you're talking about.
And
so
Kyle
I agree
Larson
with you 100% on that.
And Kyle Larson, from all accounts, I've seen him at some dirt track events. I'm not the type of person that goes up to people and especially famous people and try to strike up a conversation with them too much because I understand that they deal with that all the time, and most of the time they're just being kind because they're that kind of person. They know it's good for their image, but they're probably sick of talking to people. So I don't want to be that next person. However, I have seen Kyle Larson talk to people at dirt track races, and he treats people like he's on the same level with them. Very down to earth, very good guy. Ryan, I know you've met Kyle Busch a couple times. Same way. Most of these guys are down to earth people, and I think that hurts NASCAR if you take that away. My opinion, I think that some owners will try it. We'll attempt to stipulate something in the contract, but I think once agents get involved and they start talking about these things, I think that goes away pretty quickly. Steve?
Oh, yeah, I definitely hope that there's no changes in ownership making demands on these guys not to race how they want to race. They're racers. That's what they do. Their adventure, they're daredevils, what they do. I guess I hope that the drivers maybe police themselves a little smarter, and not force an owner to put it in a contract or get legal people involved. And
let me ask you that, Steve. Do you think other NASCAR drivers would go to Chase Elliott and go, "You hurt all of us by your actions"? Because that's the policing that you're talking about.
I think they would be hypocritical if they did that.
Okay.
I don't think that they would, because they all have their own quirks of things. Some fly, flying your own plane too. I mean, Chase Elliott flies his own jet. He's a pilot. He's got his helicopter license and a pilot license. We saw what that did to Davey Allison, sadly.
Yeah.
There was the up and coming star, heir apparent to Dale Earnhardt, and he lost his life in a helicopter accident. These guys are all daredevils. It's what they do.
Yeah.
So, it's a dangerous thing they do for their teams, for their sponsors. And if that's how they learn to live their lives, so be it. If Kyle Larson wants to go race sprint cars, you hope and pray he doesn't get hurt, but I don't want to see him not have the ability to go do that.
When
I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
If Chase's family has a chalet on a mountain in Colorado and they ski as a family adventure, I don't want Chase to be say, "Oh, I got to sit here and watch damn IU play Ohio State in basketball because, I can't in my contract go snowboard with you guys."
Well,
I don't want that to happen.
Georgia, but
so I hope they don't. I hope the drivers just use more. I always question why Chase Elliott quit running trucks, quit running Xfinity. He doesn't run sprints that much at all. He goes to the Chili Bowl for fun. But, you know, there's a guy, I thought a young kid that would be a racer, who I consider a racer. But when he got a cup ride, he pretty well quit driving everything else for the most part. But think about it. I mean, he does maybe 1 or 2 Xfinity races a year, maybe 1 truck. Other than that, he's just strictly cup. Whereas Kyle Larson is always, God, where's Kyle Larson? Like, where's Waldo?
Yeah.
You
And
know,
let me ask you this.
let them do their own thing.
Think back several years ago when Tony Stewart had that sprint car incident with that young man that lost his life. Walking down the track
At Eldora.
How many races did Tony Stewart miss after that incident?
I don't know. Did he miss any?
I can't remember.
He did.
But it was self-imposed, wasn't it? It was self-imposed.
Yes, it was. And
and
there was a lot going on. There was a civil suit that was filed.
Right.
Yeah.
And I personally thought Tony was never the same driver after that incident, because I thought that did weigh on him. But he did remove himself, even if briefly, from the sport after.
Yeah.
That. Right.
I think I do recall that.
Well, and my point being is, at the time, Tony Stewart was one of the biggest drivers in NASCAR.
Oh yeah.
And you know, we didn't see any ill effects from off track competition and other forms of racing after that. And I think, you know, moving forward, if that didn't cause anything to come to a head, and you see these drivers being told to stop competing, I don't think that a skiing accident or a snowboarding accident with Chase Elliott is going to cause any ill effects to off the track competition.
I want to go back to what Steve said, and I think this is very important in terms of certain sports. Basketball made Kobe tick. Michael Jordan, basketball made Michael Jordan tick. When you talk about extreme sports, and I consider NASCAR that, because not everybody goes 200 mile an hour and is this close to the wall and this close to the person in front of them. And realistically, there's a reason why they have an invocation before each race, because there's a possibility somebody may meet the Lord at the end of that race. Plain and simple. I think you have to give the driver that type of leash, because this is something that makes them tick. You cannot restrict Kyle Larson or Kyle Busch from getting in a car. That is simply detrimental to who they are and what makes them tick. I think the same thing can be said when it comes to snowboarding. I don't understand snowboarding, but I will say this. I think people that do it have a little bit of a nuts to them, because at any single time, this is a type of result that can happen. Exactly right. And I think it goes along the same. It's an adrenaline factor that not everybody has, not everybody understands, but what keeps them going. And I think that's a great point, Steve, because even though we may look at it as stupid, it may be the same type of thing that Chase Elliott says, this is the closest I can get without being in a NASCAR. And maybe Chase Elliott feels like being in a car at 200 mile an hour, or like Joe said, when it comes to dirt, is way more dangerous. I don't know. And that snowboarding is somehow safer, because you don't hear about as many possible deaths when it comes to snowboarding.
No.
But it may still make them get that same type of adrenaline rush that they do while being in a car.
You know, to a lot of people, they may have the image of snowboarding of Shaun White in the half pipe. Okay. Right. My gut feeling is what Chase Elliott was doing was going down the hill with his dad and mom on skis, and he just decides to snowboard instead, and he hits a rock or a stump. And, you know, I doubt that he's on a half pipe trying to do 4.5 quad, you know, backflip curls for a gold medal. I think he's probably just going down the hill, you know, weaving as they do to do whatever snowboarders do. And it ends up catching a bad break or a soft spot or something, and it just snaps his leg. I mean, over and done within a second.
We know what he was doing. We have a video of it on our channel.
Oh, okay.
All right. Joe, before we sign off here, is there anybody that has any comments or questions at Command Center 1?
No. We've had quite a few viewers, but nobody wanted to chime in tonight.
I have a topic for Wednesday.
Good.
Yeah, save it for Wednesday.
Good, because
I want to tease the topic.
Preface it. That's fine. Go ahead. You can tease it.
John Monet was just suspended indefinitely from the NBA for doing a video on YouTube holding a gun, right?
John Morant?
John Morant.
Who the hell did you say? John Bonet?
No, Monet.
Yeah.
That's how much I pay attention to the NBA.
Jesus.
I was thinking of the girl, Janelle Monet.
Yes.
I was
And
thinking John
it was-
Bonet Ramsey.
okay.
I had no idea where
it was a little more than that, Steve.
But he just was a dad. I saw the video. All right. So he gets booted from the NBA indefinitely. How many times have I seen video of Dale Earnhardt running around the woods with a shotgun?
Oh, stop it. Stop it.
Where's the difference?
There's a huge difference. And
Okay,
quit acting
we'll
like a
talk about
liberal.
that on Wednesday.
No, I'm not talking about that. That's ridiculous.
All right, I'm done.
All right. Well, guys, again, this was just an impromptu. I wanted to talk about Chase Elliott. I knew we'd have a lot to talk about. And, I thought that we could lead a good show with it, that there's no way we could fit in a weekly show with other topics. So, again, if you enjoyed this conversation, check out what we had on our post-race show. We most certainly made that more enlightening than what the race was. There's other ways that you can help. Go ahead, Steve.
I'm going to add an addendum to my bold prediction that
Uh-oh.
Cody Ware will win a race this year.
Oh, get out of here.
Oh,
You
Jesus Christ.
I'm going to
the
add an
last-
addendum to that.
You're
I'm going
lucky.
to say
You're lucky Ryan threw his flags because the last two things you said. have
I'm
just
going to
been
add
ridiculous.
1B. 1B is Chase Elliott wins the NASCAR Cup Championship this year.
That's ridiculous.
That would be a bold prediction.
That's a bold prediction. I'm saying it right now. Mark this show 3 weeks into it. With the injury, I say he wins the championship this
Bold.
year.
That's a bold. Another word.
It's a bold prediction. Yeah.
Bold.
Well, if
Bullshit
you agree
prediction.
with Steve, you can like this video. You can also subscribe to our channel to get other bold predictions and also any other NASCAR content, because we try to cover everything that there is in NASCAR. We had a Formula One race preview that we did. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on, very briefly, because there's really just not a lot to talk about when it comes to
Total
the Formula
Wolf
One
whining
race.
and crying already.
So we will talk about those different things. And again, if you like what you see and you want to invest in us, we do have a Patreon. We don't talk about it a lot because at the end of the day, if that's something you want to do and want to help us grow, feel free to do so. If not, that's fine as well. But again, my name's Ryan Peters with Joe Spillman, Steve Risley. This has been Stuck in the Catch Fence. No more flags.